Hi, Ameya. I'm so glad to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to connect.
It's so beautiful to see you and your beautiful background. It feels like a goddess altar behind you. And yeah, I would love for you to. I always start by asking if there's any mindfulness or meditation practice or any embodiment practice that you have on a daily basis that you would like to share with the listeners.
Mm. Well, mine is always changing because I have a very active 5-year-old. So I don't have all the time very spacious mornings and all of that. So I have to find it when I can get it. I would say for sure a walk in nature and connecting in that way because nature is my sanctuary. And then if I have time later in the day, to sit at my altar, but it may be 5 or 10 minutes. And usually when I sit at my altar, I have some sort of intention. Um, whether that may be to connect with self, or maybe I'm looking for an answer for something that is really present for me. And I generally tend to use flower essences, which I know we're going to talk about today, but I tend to use a flower essence to kind of amplify whatever it is that I'm intending at my altar. So those would be my two for sure. But it's not like wake up and have my teas and all those things that I used to do. It's more catching in the moments that I have.
Mm, that's beautiful, and it's natural also that these things change, and we have to adapt to. We can't be rigid in our routines and rituals. Like I think that also depending on the season and where we are in our own life and in our cycles, it really changes all the time. Like what nourishes us and what we need. So I think
Exactly.
that makes sense. And yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. And I've been following you for a while on Instagram and your work, and also you share a lot of beautiful videos. I learned so much from them, and you're so uh, passionate and really embodied in this work of flower essences. Maybe you want to start by uh, introducing yourselves to those that are here listening or watching this, like who you are and what you're doing in your life.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Yeah, so that we can all get connected to each other instead of just being some random person who's talking.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So my name's Ameya, as you shared, and I say founder in quotes because it feels like I'm part of a co-creation. That is the Woman Rising Mystery School. And I never intended to create a school at all, but it was just through years and years of students saying, I want this, or I want to go deeper here, or that we started to birth all of these different trainings and programs. And these offerings are really rooted in earth wisdom, specifically flower essences, in trauma informed healing and repair, and the devotional Rose Priestess Path. And they all really weave together. They're all part of one and the same. And so I get to walk side by side with amazing, brave, courageous women from around the world who are wanting to expand and remember. And so, as you said, like talking about flower essences, and flower essences are a very integral part of all of the work that I do because I really, really, really believe that in order for us to expand, in order for us to live that vision that we have, or get that partner that we imagine, or have financial success, or health, vitality, like whatever it is that we're all holding, we have to go within and we have to feel all the things. And for me, the best way to do that is through nature and through a devotional path. So, we have amazing different programs, and I'm sure more to birth soon as I continue to evolve and as we all continue to evolve.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah,
And it's really, like you said, it's weaving together so much wisdom traditions and remembrance of this also feminine um, leadership and creation that has now flourished so much and is so needed as well to balance what's like this other side which has been so strong. And we're coming back to, like you said, like nature and working with something so subtle, like I'm always thinking about flowers, like there's no one that thinks that a flower is ugly. It's always something that really opens our heart. And we, like, today I was walking in a garden here close by, and I'm just like the colors and the shapes and just looking at them and being around them, it's like so healing and like balancing in some way. So I would also like to know, like, how did your path start into that which you're doing today? Because there's always this interesting story behind why we choose these paths in our lives.
absolutely. So, the story is very windy, and there's certain anchor points and points that, looking back, I go, oh, okay, that's part of how I ended up there. In the moment, they just felt like painful parts of life. Um, but really, I feel like the plants have always been with me. When I look back, and my grandmother was German, and was born in the early 1900s, and so she would get her hair rinsed with chamomile tea, and plants and herbs were just part of how she grew up. And when she came to the US, and when I was little with her, we would garden and grow tomatoes and strawberries. And even though there wasn't this transmission of herbal medicine and living simply with the earth, it was just part of her life. And that got translated to my mom and then to me. My mom was always a gardener, and there was always this beautiful tree in our backyard that we played with and under. But I also lived a really like normal suburban life. And I had parents who got divorced when I was 9, and that was a very big rupture in my life that set me up for all different patterns and beliefs that challenged my life so significantly. And so when I moved away to go to university, I had this moment really that I think we all have at different times of our life of who am I? Right? Who am I past all the pain, past the joy, past the conditionings? Who am I? And I happened to go to a university where herbal medicine and plants were really abundant. And we found each other. And I began to apprentice in an herb store. And I just started studying. And I fell in love with, plants. What? They can do everything. I had grown up next door. Literally, we shared a driveway with my pediatrician. And we would walk over to his house and we would say, we don't feel good. And he would give us like a handful of antibiotics. And we would walk back to my house. And that was normal. So my mind was totally blown when I started learning about plant medicine. I was like, what? This works, this heals, pretty much everything and everything. And then through that, it was like my priestess path opened. And as much as I loved herbal medicine, there was this part that felt missing. Like we are still treating the symptom. Why is the symptom there? Why do I have, really heavy cycles and painful cycles and chronic yeast infections? And like, why is all of that in my body? And so then I found plant spirit medicine, which is sort of a merging of shamanism and acupuncture and plants. and flower essences. And it was like the whole world lit up, because it was like all these parts, right? Like my spiritual path, my pains, my deep pains, attracting unavailable men, and all the pains in my body. When I started using flower essences, the awarenesses that I had in my body, the healings that then happened, and my life started to transform. And so I started, just working with clients and people. And now it's been 20 some years. So, I mean, obviously there's like so many details within all of that. But I think usually pain and suffering and challenge are the things that propel us then to our wholeness and to finding harmonization inside. And I'm so grateful. I'm just so grateful to Gaia. I'm so grateful to my path, even amidst all of the incredible, incredible hurts as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. These experiences really initiated you into what you're doing today. So it's like, I think it's hard as like women that are also meant to walk this path usually have this everything that you're sharing. I think many of us can relate to, and it really propels us or pushes us into diving deeper, like you said. Like otherwise maybe we would have lived just on the surface level, just doing everything as we're supposed to do, and everything is like seems to be balanced. But of course everyone has their ups and downs and challenges. But when you have that deep experiences also from an early childhood, the sensitivity opens and grows, and the empathic abilities. And what I've seen also, and I want to talk to you about this as well, because I see it with women that come into our acupuncture clinic where I've been doing my clinical practice, that many women that have these emotional traumas, which you also mentioned and work with, there's usually so much imbalances in the reproductive system and the womb, and it manifests in different ways. But I see that also like here in Sweden with women like me that have immigrant backgrounds and from the Middle East. A lot of women around me have that, because it's also the trauma of the generations, the lineage. So, and in your life you also experienced that. How did it manifest, and what was your path to healing that?
Yeah, well, I think, what you're bringing forth is, I think it's one of the most essential conversations to be having, because I don't know what it's like in Sweden, but, here in the United States, we really normalize reproductive health issues, challenges, and symptoms for women. Like, oh, of course, you're in your 20s, you have that. You're in your 30s, you have that. You're in your 40s. But it's not really quote unquote normal to have debilitating pain with your menstrual cycles, or to have infertility issues in your 20s, or all of these things that we normalize because modern medicine really doesn't have that many options. It's like take a pill or have surgery. And it really is a quest for a woman to go deep within self and say, what is my body communicating? And there is an epidemic amongst women right now within our reproductive systems, organs. And it feels like, at this time of such immense awakening, we're being gifted a really profound invitation. And unfortunately, a lot of women don't even look at their reproductive system until they want to have a baby. And then it's like, oh, I care about this, when really, like, this is, on an energetic and spiritual level, the womb space is that the cauldron of our power. And really initiates so much inside of us of who we are. So I think, I could talk about that forever, because when I first started practicing when I was 24, plant spirit medicine and herbal medicine and flower essences, I started working with so many women. I mean, I've worked with hundreds of women over the last 2 decades with hormonal and reproductive endocrine system, let's just say endocrine system issues. And 97% of the time, there's some sort of trauma. So personal trauma, or as you said, intergenerational trauma. And so for me, I just started seeing patterns. And as I saw patterns in other women, of course, I had that reflection in my own self. What's happened to me, and what are my tissues holding that after so long, they have to be expressed through a physical symptom. And I really believe that, sexual trauma and sexual betrayal is, part of why we have this epidemic, not even, personally, but collectively against women. And like you said, like coming from the Middle East, like there's a whole culture of feminine suppression. And we carry that in our bodies, and we carry the ancestral wounds in our bodies until we go, I'm complete, and I'm completing this, and I'm going to change this. And so, as I was sharing earlier, like my issues were, the most painful menstrual cramps in my teens. I mean, I could feel the heaviness of my womb, the heaviness of my yoni. It was just, everything was so heavy and painful. And you just pop an Advil, right? You don't really talk about it. No one's talking about it. And I remember my mom taking me to a gynecologist when I was, I don't know, 15, 16, to talk to her about this pain I was having. And all she did was write me a prescription for birth control pills. And I remember something inside of me my mom must have gotten it filled, the prescription, but I remember her giving it to me, and I shoved it in the back of a drawer in my room. Like something inside just knew, not that I had anything else that I was really doing or using, but I just wasn't interested. And I remember finding it years later when I packed to leave home, going, oh, wow, I never took those. And I'm so grateful that I never took those. And then just for me, one of my main uncomfortable feminine issues was chronic yeast infections for years and years and years. And I tried everything: homeopathics, herbal medicine, essential oils, shamanic practitioners, prescription drugs, everything. It was just recurrent for 3 years. And if you've ever had vaginal yeast infections, they are really uncomfortable. They're really uncomfortable. And it really wasn't until I started going, why is this here? And using flower essences to get to the trauma in those vaginal tissues, that they disappeared. So, and that was radical for me, because I had been really suffering. And also that was a whole journey of really communing with my own deep feminine, which is still a process, and I hope is still there, until I take my last breath.
Wow. Yeah. That's so beautiful. And that the thing that helped you was so on a subtle level, because I think usually when we have something in our body, we tend to first look at it from the physical level and see, like, okay, what am I eating? How am I sleeping? How am I, everything that we can do physically. Right. But usually it's not on a physical level. So that's when we have to release that. I'm thinking about all the different issues that you also mentioned that women can have. Is usually we don't go to the root. And what you said also about herbal medicine can also be it could also be used as just symptom, like symptom medicine, just as Western medicine. But I think that when it comes to this really holistic way to see it, is to work with all the layers of our being, and that it takes us deeper. So it's really a part of our path to walk that path, and we have to trust that. But in the moment, it can be very tough when you're going through something physical that is like really these cramps and periods that feel like you're dying, and you don't get any answers, and you just get pills, and it's not helping anything. And we see this, how much this has caused other issues now in women, and it's such a strange thing, and that society has created for us, that we're supposed to just suppress everything and not deal with anything, because as you said, also the doctors in countries which are not holistic, they don't have any tools, and they're not even allowed to use, even if they themselves personally know something, they're not allowed to use those tools. So that's why it's so important with these alternative ways of working and educating yourself, and the work that you do, and it has probably helped so many women, and it's on a subtle level. So I would also like to learn more about, because there's so many different maybe people think about these essential oils, and then we think about flower essence, tinctures, like there's so much, like what is the flower essence
What
that
is
you work
it?
with? Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good question. Yeah. Um, so yeah, there's sort of this umbrella term of plant medicine or botanical medicine. And then underneath of that, there's all different kinds. There's homeopathy, there's Chinese herbal medicine, there's Western herbal medicine, there's essential oils, there's gemotherapy, there's flower essences, and there's probably so many others that I haven't, even said. And so flower essences and essential oils can sometimes get confused because of that word essence or essential, but they're really two very different forms of plant medicine. So essential oils, the process of collecting the oil from a plant, from a flower, uses a still, and one side pulls the waters and one side pulls the oils, and the oils are very fragrant, and they're just used in a very specific way. Flower essences are collected in this very deeply partnered way with the earth. And basically a flower essence, so this is the best way that I can describe a flower essence. If we all believe, let's say we all believe that everything that's alive has spirit. You and I have spirit, plants, trees, animals, critters, birds. So we just have this understanding that everything has spirit. Everything has a life force, an animating force moving through it, including flowers. And so in the process of creating a flower essence, you're really collecting the essence or the spirit or the vibration. Okay, there's all different words you can use depending on what most resonates. And it's different than essential oils, although really high quality essential oils you can ingest. Flower essences, you are to ingest them. And so when you ingest them into your body, there's this incredible experience where you're met spirit to spirit. And that, I have tears just thinking about it, because that's not something that we're always aware of. Like, I think most of us, if we're lucky or blessed, have had an experience in our life where we meet another human, and it's that soul to soul, spirit to spirit moment. Not all of us have had that. It's rare, and it's so beautiful and miraculous, because as humans, we have these eyes, and we go, okay, that's a woman, that's a man, that's an old person, that's a young person. And depending on what they're wearing, we have judgments, we have observations, we have all these things that come into play. So it's really hard to see spirit only. So when we have this experience where we ingest the energy and we're met spirit to spirit, anything that's not of our spirit, which is traumas, hurts, pains, limiting beliefs, all of these human things that have happened and then imprinted into our bodies, the flower essences start to move those imprints. They start to shift those beliefs so that you come into that expanded place of your true nature, of your true essence. And that doesn't mean that it's all like beauty and, lightness at all, because some of those things that we have suppressed or pushed aside are very painful. And so you've mentioned that flower essences are they're considered a subtle therapy because you're working in the subtle realms of spirit. But when you ingest it, it doesn't mean that the response is going to be subtle. I've had essences that leave me, on my floor crying from heartache. And I've had essences that give me like the most tremendous courage and everything and all in between. So for me, I think they're the best medicine for emotional repair. And I think even more now on this planet, turning to medicine of the earth and flower essences specifically, and really even if we compare them to essential oils, they are one of the most sustainable ways we can work with the plants. Whereas essential oils, you could take, acres and acres of roses to make a small amount of rose essential oil. And with flower essences, you could use one hibiscus flower that lasts a lifetime. So they're very sustainable, which is really important right now as we're seeing, just what is happening on this planet, climate, extinction. How can we be more sustainable? Even if we're using plant medicine, like how can we be more sustainable? And I'm going to pause there because honestly, Shireen, once you get me started with flower essences, like I can't really stop. But that's the best description over like so long doing this work that I've come up with, to make it understandable and perhaps more tangible, because they are somewhat intangible, and they kind of get this like kind of airy fairy, like that's cool flower essences. But the way that I work with them, the way that I teach about them is from a very grounded and embodied and trauma informed lens, that they are potent medicine of this now moment.
Yeah. And what you said also is like, isn't it so that you can work with it in a also ceremonial way, since we're working with the spirit? So it's really like, let's say if I would take, of course everything can be ingested ceremonial, like the water we drink, the food we eat. Let's say that we make a Chinese medicine tea, we drink it and with the intention. But I think maybe with these essences, can it be even more powerful if you do it like that, if you're not just thinking about the physical thing that you're drinking?
I mean, I everything's connected, right? So we don't have physical pain without having emotional pain and some mental pain as well. And this is medicine. We live in this, there's so much medical trauma that we've all experienced. And so we tend to just live in this world where you take a pill while you're like cooking dinner or you're driving in the car. There's no connection. And with flower essences, I always tell my students and clients, take a few drops, sit and breathe for a minute. right? Like this is medicine moving and working inside of your body. Give it the respect and the honor that is needed. And that's just like when you're working on physical and emotional things. But, like your question and what I said in the beginning is I use them in ceremony. I use them with intention. Like right now on my on my desk, I have Osiris essence that I've collected. So the god Osiris, the Egyptian god, and I also have Asherah, who I have a deep connection with, the Hebrew mother goddess. And sometimes I'll just sit at my altar and take one drop of one of those, or as I said, like I have an intention or a question, like show me the way, and rather than finding the answer in my mind, letting my body, letting spirit, sometimes when I'm leading women's circles and we're journeying with an intention maybe to heal our mother wounds, we journey all together with a specific essence, which in this case might be like Mariposa lily for, that's such a great flower for healing the mother wound. So they can be used. I mean, yeah, there's so many ways to use them. And I'm a Gemini. So, that kind of stereotypical, like Geminis are all over the place and they fly around. And, I don't ever get bored with flower essences because there's so many ways to use them, from physical issues like Lyme or reproductive health issues to emotional issues like sexual trauma or daily overwhelm or anxiety to deep communion with spirit, with the elementals, with your guides, with self. And that to me feels like such a intricate and beautiful system. That's why I feel so passionate about sharing, because it's so multifaceted. And these are only things that I know, right? There's more that I have yet to even understand about them. Yeah.
Yeah, you've probably done this in other lifetimes as well. So you're just remembering now, coming into this life and taking it
And
all back.
every flower has its own medicine. So, like thinking about our own self, like think about yourself. I think about myself. I'm still discovering parts of myself. I'm in my 40s. When we meet a flower, like those flowers that were waving to you in the garden, it's not just like one moment where the flower fully gives every part of their medicine. It's like, what happens when you journey with that flower for 10 years? I mean, there's so much to learn and there's so much to partner with in nature. Like that gets me so excited, is the grid of consciousness that we live in, the patriarchal grid, hasn't expanded far enough to really include nature as consciousness. And when we do that, it's like, oh my gosh, it's this massive medicine basket and communion. And we remember that we're nature. We're not just these like machines that are supposed to do and make money and do and make money and do and make money. Like that's not why we're here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You've said so many things that I really like, I love, and that it's very synchronized with just you mentioning Osiris. It has been very much in my consciousness these past days. So I felt like, okay, now something. Yeah, definitely. And when I'm speaking to you, I think about, since you're also on the priestess path, and I'm thinking about these ancient Egyptian priestesses, the mirror force, mirror
Oh, the
force.
mirror. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And how they worked with these sacred oils that was also made from flowers and herbs, and
Yeah.
so there is a clear lineage. And what you said is something important, because whoever I talk to or discuss anything that's happening in the world, it's the imbalance between the feminine and masculine. So this, we have been in too much of the, if you look at the history when it comes to, I'm I've always been connected to Ishtar or Inanna, which is from the Mesopotamian and Sumerian texts, um, and um, and you see the timeline, how her, like, her role and her importance diminishes, and then we see how we all of a sudden start to create a world that is, as you said, not in touch with earth, because it's also the feminine. So it's natural that you stop working with that in that sacred way, like you said, and disconnect yourself, instead of being in constant communion with the divine, being feeling that separation and that hierarchy and everything that's going on. So I think also that, and as you said before, that this is manifested in women who are very devoted, because like you, I'm very devoted to a devotional path, and I think that when you become that open channel from your young, like you also were, then you start feeling everything in your body. And it's so important to be in communion with nature and the flowers and everything, because otherwise it becomes so dense. Everything is so dense. And there was this beautiful post that a Swedish man actually posted, that women are very much um, thinning out the denseness of the world through our bodies. So even what is the blood, what is that coming out, it's so important to be in connection with that as a ritual, as a ceremony, and understanding why the body is channeling all of these things. So I love what you said about the, like, the whole, how, what is the history with the flower essences? Has it been dated back very long, like working with this type? And maybe for some people that don't know what it is, like, how is it made, the flower, simply said?
Yeah, well, I just first wanted to just reflect to what you were saying, because that's really an enormous piece of all of this, with um, I really believe that one of our greatest wounds is our disconnect from nature, from Gaia, from the feminine. And the feminine used to be, in all the temples and part of these great civilizations, and she's been exiled. And yes, there's an awakening of her, but it has to be also an awakening in our own self, because it's too easy and convenient to just point our fingers and go, the patriarchy or the medical system or this and that. I think it's kind of like an important first step of our awakening. But then rather than point our fingers at potential things that we may or may not be able to change, it's like, where are we still abandoning ourselves? Where are we still suppressing self? Because that's part of our indoctrination. And these are really powerful questions, and they're big questions to ask. And sometimes the answers that come forth are really painful and uncomfortable, but they ultimately get us to a place of more liberation, physically and emotionally. And so I know we could keep talking about that, because it's all really connected, what the ancient ones, how the ancient ones lived compared to how we live now, and everything that's happened in between. So as far as your question with the flower, wait, I remember one part of your question, but about how they're collected. What was the other part?
Yeah, so how, how are they made? And also, there was so too many questions in my
I know
mind. I
there's
had so
something
many. Yeah, but just like, how are they made? And do you?
Oh, the lineage. It was the
Yeah,
lineage. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
That's very
like
important.
how, yeah.
Yeah. So the lineage piece is a very interesting piece with flower essences, because it's not a straight line. Like we can't say, oh, flower essences came from ancient Sumeria and were passed down through this one specific lineage. They are the essence. So it was originally thought that flower essences came from people drinking the dewdrops off of plants, that in the morning when the dew had gathered on flowers, like you would drink it like an elixir, like a cordial, and you would receive from that place. And there's also, you know, shamans and medicine people and native peoples who have always spoken and worked intimately with the spirit of plants. And so there's, you know, it's funny because I was just teaching about this in our flower essence practitioner training program, just like the ways in which many lands weave together to then ultimately create this, what we now think of as flower essences, which were created by Dr. Bach in England in the 1930s, but they come from homeopathy, they come from shamanism, and the reverence of flowers and plants and the spiritual qualities of those go back 5,000 years, you know, in temples, written on temple walls, going back to Lemuria, really even beyond that, to when, you know, people lived with technologies of nature. And so it's the lineage piece is sometimes it's challenging for me. Sometimes it feels easeful because there isn't this just one direct line. It's really this compounding of many different places and lands that then weave into this medicine. And the modernization of this, because, you know, in the time of Lemuria, it may not have been that we needed these little tincture bottles. It was like we were open and we just received the intelligence of the plants. And so, you know, it's also interesting to think of the evolution of our consciousness and what's needed. And so the next piece of like, how do you collect an essence? Part of the first step of that is being, I don't want to say connected, but really attuning your energy to the energy of that flower, right? Because we don't want to just take, like when I learned flower essence, you know, I learned you make a flower essence. And over the years, I thought, well, make isn't the right word because I'm not really making anything. I'm collecting and I'm part of the collection process. And basically, it's this very cosmic way to create medicine, but you need to be connecting with the plant and obviously get the permission to collect its essence, its most intimate revelatory part of itself that holds all of its consciousness and intelligence. I mean, that's a huge gift that a flower is saying yes to you receiving. And then you need a bowl of water, using, of course, really good, high quality water, because this is your medicine, right? You don't want just like medicine that's full of toxins. And you, after you get a yes from the flower, you take some flowers from the plant and put it in the top surface of the bowl, and you leave it in the sunlight. And that's the traditional method that was taught by Dr. Bach. There's so many different ways to make essences. You can collect them in the moonlight. You can collect them in the sun and the moon. Some really want both of the solar and the lunar energies. And part of that knowing is because you're in relationship and connection with a plant. So you might hear the plant say, oh, I want the moon. Or you just may get that intuitive sense of, that plant wants the moon. Or you may see something, because we all have different oracular ways that we are connected to spirit. And then there's a whole process after you collect the essence of distillation, which in flower essences is kind of hard for the mind to understand, because in flower essences you make what's called a mother essence, and then you dilute it. And each step that you dilute it, similar to homeopathy, each step that you dilute it actually potentizes it to the emotional body. And in our minds, we go, well, if it's more dilute, it's not as strong. But with flower essences, again, because there's a connection to homeopathy, because Dr. Bach was a homeopathic doctor, there's the more dilute, the more it goes into the system. The less dilute, it stays more on the physical. And so that's why you can use flower essences for emotional support, and physical support. So I don't want to get like too into that process because it gets really heady and a little bit confusing. And that doesn't necessarily need to happen. But basically, you take a bowl and water and allow the sun and the solar activations and amplifications to pull the essence into the waters. And then you go through the process of dilution.
That's so beautiful, and that it also affects the crystals and the shapes in the water. That it's like when I'm looking at your roses there, and I'm thinking that the flowers are like a sacred, like a, yeah, it's in itself like a technical construction that is in itself just so much, because it's the what it is as we see it, how it feels when we touch it, how it smells, and how it shapes reality. Because for me, when I give healing sessions, especially when I'm doing it remotely, there's always some flower that comes up on, I can see it on different parts of the body that come up, that is saying this is the medicine for this part of the body. And it can be that you have that, and usually it is roses actually, but different colors. You can have it in your home because that's also medicine, but also you can take it, like how you say, like ingest it or use it in any way, because it's really a frequency, and the rose's frequency is very beautiful, I think. So just watching it there, and I'm thinking also about the flower of life. Like, it's not just that it's a flower, it reminds us of all of creation in some way, and why is it there, and the bees come, and all of this, it's like magical in itself. And it's so it is in itself a technology that does so much, but we don't have faith in that technology because it's simple and easy, but it's really something that is like in our DNA, I think.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a very magical and simplistic process for sure. And there is a whole piece. It's like everything you're saying and everything I've been talking about with the plants. And then there's this whole piece with the water, right? And all the studies that have been done and of water's consciousness, right? And so this plant with the sun, with the waters, it's like this whole magical alchemy is created, and our minds are so limited by what we've learned to be true of what's possible, right? Like if we grew up still with a native culture intact, living closely to the earth, it wouldn't even be a conversation because it just is. But our minds sort of have to wrap around this. And you know what I've seen over years of doing this work is that, like, there's a moment where people go, okay, I don't really understand how this works, but I know that I feel better and I know that I'm healing. And so at some point, it doesn't matter. At some point, like, the mind doesn't need to understand every single part because you're seeing the the expression of that through yourself. And that's the affirmation. This works. This is real. This is powerful. And it's magical. Like,
Mm.
and it has all of that you were just sharing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's actually like, there's a lot of acupuncturists who, instead of using needles, use flower essences.
Mm.
It's a whole
Wow.
really incredible way of working
Mm.
with the meridians and all the significant points, but you're not using needles. You're using, like, you're seeing a flower, that
Mm.
red rose would be great on this, that's the colon point or something, like,
The
or
the large
large
intestine, yeah.
intestine. Yeah.
Mm.
So it's like, there's just, oh my gosh, it's just, you can get so creative and imaginative.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And exactly, the needles itself is just a tool. So it's the intention and seeing what the person needs and what we need ourselves. We can go into that state and really find what is needed. And I think also the colors, the smell, and like it really enhances so much in us and awakens so much. So it's really
Yes.
beautiful. And I would like you to share, like, how, so if people do get very interested in this now, what
Yeah.
are you offering when it comes to this whole world of flower essences?
Yeah, well, we have lots of different offerings. So um, I have an online, like, self-study program.
Mhm.
So if you're like, this is intriguing to me and I kind of want to learn a little bit more, we have a 4-week self-study program. So, you can find that on the website, which is womanrisingmysteryschool.com. And, it's pretty easeful, and it's sort of an introductory, initiatory journey into flower essences. What are they? How do I make them? And then you go make them. And how do I commune with a plant? And how do I learn to formulate? Because how do I work with the issues that are present for me? So it's a really great um, program. And then for people who are, really want to dive deep into that, which is a select group, we have every year our 6-month flower essence practitioner training program, which is very in-depth and rich curriculum that gives a whole entire system of understanding healing and how to use flower essences. And of course, that's just for practitioners. So there's that through the Woman Rising Mystery School. And then about a year and a half ago, we started a physical product line called Gaia's Wisdom. And so Gaia's Wisdom, you can, go to the website. We have it, I think we have it pretty well organized right now. We have it by topics. So if you're dealing with anxiety, or you want to support yourself with abundance, or you're dealing with childhood woundings, we have it in topics. And so you can click on those and read about some of the essences. And I do a lot of Instagram lives where sometimes I'll just pick specific essences and you go, oh my gosh, I really need that one. And so that's a place, those are essences that I've collected from California to the East Coast of the United States, to Israel, to
Mm.
Hawaii, to Avalon, the holy isle of within Glastonbury. And
Mm.
so they're essences that I've collected and have worked with, and highly, highly recommend to serve and support. So hopefully there's kind of a little bit of everything for, those of you who are listening. You're just like, I just want to take the essences.
Mm.
Go to gaiaswisdom.com. And if you're like, I actually want to learn more, then you can go to Woman Rising Mystery School. Actually, I think you can probably buy the home study course on Gaia's Wisdom, but
Mm.
all that to say, there's lots of things depending on where you're at. We also have a bunch of free ebooks on the
Mm.
website. So if you're like, I'm just want to learn a little bit more, we
Mm.
have, my favorite 10 essences for women's health, or essences for healing the mother wound, or I forget what else we have right now, but those are also just free resources to download, and those are really helpful. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah,
lots of ways. Lots.
that's beautiful. I mean, just having those options, if you have time to go in deeper, it's really nice. And then you have these finished essences that are picked from all over the world, from magical places like Glastonbury. So I think that's really a really nice offering. And I want to thank you so much today for taking your time to share. I have a million more questions, but we could talk forever. But I think
We could
another
talk forever.
time we will definitely dive deeper into one of the other topics that we tapped into. And I want to thank you so much for this beautiful and sacred time together. And yeah, I'll speak to you soon, I hope.
Thank you so much. I just loved your insight, your understandings, all of your questions and sharings. It's really, yeah, it's great to connect in this way. Thank you so much.
Mm, thank you.